All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline, and I'm the Community Science Outreach Coordinator for the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History. And welcome to Digital Science Saturday, Amazing Migrations. Today, we have Marine Life Studies going to be giving us a talk on some of the amazing organisms, including whales, that like to visit us here in Monterey Bay. And I will hand it over to Stephanie.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Marcos. I'm Operations Manager at Marine Life Studies. I've been with Marine Life Studies for about 7 years, going on 8 years now. And so I just wanted to thank the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History for inviting us today. But first, just a little bit about myself. I'm a level 2 whale disentanglement responder of the Monterey Bay, and we're really fortunate to be able to do our work as the whale entanglement team. Marine Life Studies also does research, education, and other conservation programs. And so I will, like Jacqueline said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what kinds of animals that you can see in the Monterey Bay, and then we'll focus on some of the humpback whales and the gray whales as we highlight their migrations throughout the Monterey Bay. And so this is just a video that shows all of our different programs. So what you're seeing here is our marine mammal guide. It's a waterproof ocean user guide that you can find on our website, marinelifestudies.org. And you might have seen it in different stores or kayak shops and things like that. It shows all the different animals you can see off the coast of California. We're going to go over a few of these. There's some species like the different beaked whales that I won't really touch on too much because they're really rare to find in the Monterey Bay because they're found in really deep water. And there's just some of the bigger ones like the sperm whale. We can only see, we see them very rarely. I think the last one that was spotted was, at least I want to say 5 years ago now. So they do come into the Monterey Bay. Maybe we might see them, maybe not, but they're definitely there. It's just kind of, you got to be there at the right time and right place. And so we'll just hop in. So the harbor seal. So harbor seals are one of the most common marine mammals along the US West and East Coast. And they're commonly seen resting on the rocks, the beaches, and along the coastline with their head and their rear flippers elevated in a banana-like position. And the harbor seals are part of the true seal family. So all true seals have short forelimbs or flippers, and they also lack external ear flaps instead of, having, well, we'll see that in the next picture, but they just have holes on the sides of their heads, kind of like an opening for their ear canal on each side. And then California sea lions are the eared seals native to the west coast of North America. They live in coastal waters and on beaches, docks, buoys, and jetties as well. And they're very playful, intelligent, and very vocal. And they pretty much sound like barking dogs on the harbor docks and things like that. And so they have more of broad front flippers and long, narrow snouts. And these, sea lions have visible ear flaps that I was telling you about. See these little things that kind of extend out near their heads. And so they also have like 3 to 5 claws on their hind flippers as well. So the kind of tell the difference between a sea lion and a harbor seal is, we usually say harbor seals are kind of like a very tightly packaged sausage laying on the beach or the rocks, while the California sea lions can actually kind of walk on their flippers. So here's a cool video, underwater video of the California sea lions. So this video was taken with a GoPro. I had a GoPro on a very long pole, probably like 15 or 20 feet long. And we were just outside the Monterey Harbor. Very cool. Then Monterey Bay is known for sea otters. Sea otters live in shallow coastal waters in the northern Pacific Ocean. They eat crabs, snails, urchins, clams, abalone, a lot of invertebrates, and so pretty much a lot of things on the seafloor. And although otters may look similar to the harbor seals and the sea lions because they're furry, they're actually part of the weasel family, which is really surprising. And oftentimes you'll see otters wrapped in kelp like this while they're napping because they want to make sure they don't get blown offshore or get lost at sea. So here's a cool video. It's a mom and pup, and the mom will actually pass the crab to her little pup.
Did you see that? He just passed it over.
I missed it, did it?
Yeah.
So cool.
Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Then we're gonna get to the cetaceans. So cetaceans are pretty much everything with a blowhole. So whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And so these harbor porpoise, they are a very shy animal. Most often they're seen in maybe groups of 2 or 3, and they prefer coastal areas and are mostly found in bays, estuaries, and even harbors sometimes. And harbor porpoises mainly eat schooling fish like herring, mackerel, and sardines, and occasionally they'll eat squid and octopus. But unlike most porpoises, they do not approach any boats to bow ride or swim in front of the bow of boats. And they can be very shy. They avoid surfacing near boats. So usually when we see them surface one time, that's probably the only time you're gonna see them after. And when they surface for air, they don't make a big blow or a splash. They kind of just roll at the surface. Then Dall's porpoise. These are kind of one of my favorites. So Dall's porpoises are common in the North Pacific Ocean and can be found off the US West Coast, from California to Alaska. And these porpoises are considered the fastest swimmers among small cetaceans, and they can reach up to about 35 miles per hour over short distances. And so in this next slide, you'll see a video of them bow riding our boat. And make sure you look at their splash, I would say, when they surface. So when they rapidly swim at the surface, it creates this spray called a rooster tail. And that's usually how we can identify them from very far away, is that you can see this. I'm gonna play that for you. So when they surface, it's a little different than a dolphin. It has that kind of rooster tail. It's a little different perspective here, but they're really cool. Okay. Then bottlenose dolphins. So bottlenose dolphins are found throughout the world in both offshore and coastal waters, including harbors and bays and estuaries. And they're actually the most studied and well-known marine mammals in the wild. In addition, they are, they're easy to view in the wild because they live so close to shore. So these are the dolphins that you probably see when you're sitting on the beach and they're just traveling in the surf line and things like that. And these bottlenose dolphins can thrive in so many different environments. They feed on different things like fish, squid, and also even crustaceans. Then there's actually 2 types of common dolphins. They're the short-beaked and the long-beaked. So this is the short one, and this is the long one. So they look really similar. And usually we can't really tell in the field until we can, take the pictures, put it on the computer and look at it to make sure, oh, okay, which one is it? But at one point they thought this was a single species, but the 2 species differ slightly in size, appearance, and then their habitat preference. And so common dolphins are usually found in very large social groups, averaging about 100 to 500 animals. And they're occasionally seen in larger herds of about thousands of animals. And so it's really cool to see these guys. I don't remember the last time we've seen them in Monterey Bay, but they're found quite often in Southern California where the water is a little warmer. But these dolphins also feed on small schooling fish, anchovies, sardines, and even they're seen eating krill and like squid and octopus too. And here's a common dolphin video again. So right now they're bow riding our boat, stuck the camera in right in front of right behind them. Then the northern right whale dolphins. So these look really weird, I know. So they are very acrobatic swimmers and can leap over 20 feet above the surface. And the northern right whale dolphins are the only species of dolphin in the North Pacific Ocean without a dorsal fin, so the fin on its back. So at sea, they're sometimes mistaken as herds of fur seals or sea lions because of their streamlined body, and they don't have that dorsal fin on their back. And occasionally we see them in mixed groups with other cetacean species, such as Pacific white-sided dolphins and Risso's dolphins. And so here's the Pacific white-sided dolphins. They're known for their distinct coloring that gives them their name, and they're very playful and a highly social marine mammal. So in the US, the Pacific white-sided dolphins live off the coast of California, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. And they can be traveling in schools of thousands, but their group sizes are usually around 10 to 100 animals. And these extremely playful dolphins are often seen bow riding or swimming in front of the boat, jumping. Sometimes they do somersaults and they even spin in the air sometimes. And so here's just a picture for you to compare the two different dolphins. So the Pacific white-sided dolphins are here. They have a dorsal fin, a very falcate or curvy dorsal fin. They're very robust. And then the northern right whale dolphins are very streamlined with no dorsal fin. So that's a really cool picture of them kind of socializing together. They're most likely feeding on the same thing, which is like sardines or anchovies in our bay. And then this is one of my, I think, award-winning videos that I'm very proud of. I had no idea I was getting this on the GoPro, but this is a video of both of them, the Pacific white-sided dolphins and the northern right whale dolphins underwater. And I think this was kind of near Big Sur, so the water quality was a lot better, water clarity was a lot better there. Because most of the time when we have a GoPro in the water, it's too murky to see all the different animals. Then these are Risso's dolphins. So these dolphins usually prefer more offshore waters, and they're especially near the continental shelf edges and slope, where they can dive at least thousands of feet and hold their breaths for longer than 30 minutes. And they are also active on the ocean surface as well. So as you can see, this dolphin species is known to have all these scars on their bodies. And so as time goes on, they'll get hundreds of these scars throughout their lifetime. Most of them are from their favorite prey item, which is squid. And squids have a mouth with a beak, kind of like a hawk's beak. And they have tentacles, and sometimes they'll have even hooks on the ends. And so when the Risso's dolphins slurp them up like spaghetti, the squids use those hooks to latch onto the body of the dolphin so it doesn't get eaten. So it's pretty cool. And as you can see, this is a new Risso's dolphin calf that doesn't have any scars on it yet. But you can see, I don't know if you guys can see, but there's these little faded lines right here. They're kind of vertical lines, and those are called fetal folds. which means those are from when it was still folded up inside the mom before it was born. Then we got the orcas, also known as killer whales. So killer whales are one of my favorites. There are different types of them that we can see in Monterey Bay, but the most common one that we can see are the transient killer whales. So that means they prefer to eat marine mammals. So although their common name is killer whale, they're actually the largest dolphin species. In the past, they were called the killer of whales or whale killers, since they were observed hunting whales for food. But throughout time, they became just killer whales. But people do mix them up. They are a toothed whale, but they're also, the largest dolphin species. And then here's a phenomenal pass of killer whales. Again, the water clarity was perfect that day. And so you can really see them really well. So cool. And the minke whale. So the minke whale is the smallest baleen whale in North American waters. They have a relatively small, dark, and sleek body that can be around 35 feet and weigh up to 20,000 pounds. I know that seems a lot, but they are the smallest baleen whale. In Monterey, it seems like these minkies are relatively shy. Like the harbor porpoise, if you see them once, you probably won't see them again. That's why we call them like slinky minkies or stinky minkies, because you only get to see it one time. But it's weird. I mean, they have virtually no blow as well, and it's hard to see them. In other parts of the world, like Southern California or Antarctica, these minke whales seem to be more curious and friendly, and they'll actually swim up to boats and be really friendly. So I wish we had those here, but the ones that we have in Monterey Bay are kind of shy. Then the gray whale. So gray whales are seasonal visitors to Monterey Bay. We consider them on a business trip as they pass through Monterey Bay. They're just passing through, don't hang around too much. And we'll talk more about them later because we want to highlight their longest known migration of any mammal. This gray whale's looking at us. This is the eye right here. Then the humpbacks. Humpbacks are the most frequent visitors in Monterey Bay. We sometimes see them year round because some choose not to migrate. So we'll talk more about them as well. But what's cool about humpbacks is that, we might see them all year round, even though most of them do migrate down south off of Mexico. It's usually the ones that stick around, the ones are very young. Maybe they're juveniles and not sexually mature yet. So they kind of have no plan to go down to the breeding or calving grounds because they can't even have babies yet. So we'll talk about them later. Then the fin whale. The fin whale is the second largest species of baleen whale we have. The fin whale has a sleek, streamlined body and with a V-shaped head, and it has a tall hooked dorsal fin, which is about 2/3 of the way behind the back of the body. So this one's really cool. I think we named this one Puzzle Piece because the trailing edge, or this edge right here of the dorsal fin, has a lot of nicks coming out of it. And fin whales have very distinct coloration. They're usually black or dark brownish gray on the back and the sides, while they're white on the underside. And their head coloring is asymmetrical. So they're dark on the left side of their lower jaw, but on the right side, you'll see a white jaw. And so that's really cool when you get to see, sometimes you never see that out in the field because they don't lift their head high enough. But we always remember for fin whales, it's white on right. So if you see the white on the right side of the jaw, you're probably looking at a fin whale. Then the blue whales, the largest animals to ever live on our planet. They feed almost exclusively on krill. They strain huge volumes of ocean water through their baleen plates. And their mottled blue-gray color pattern of their skin appears light blue underwater, hence their name, the blue whale. And the modeling pattern is variable and can be used to identify individuals. So this is kind of the perfect photo ID shot of a blue whale, because you can match all of these different things on the modeled skin and the shape of its dorsal fin. Then here's a video of a blue whale surfacing. Yeah, blue whales remind me of very long serpents. When they're about to dive, it seems like their bodies just keep going and going and going, and then you'll see their tiny little dorsal fin. And then occasionally they'll lift their very large tail, which can be about 25 feet across from tip to tip. And so these blue whales average around 80 to 90 feet long, but they can get around 100 feet. The longest one on record was 110 feet long. But you might be wondering, why do we have all these animals visiting the bay, and what draws them to Monterey Bay? And so what makes Monterey Bay so unique is the Monterey Submarine Canyon. So as you can see, it starts right outside Moss Landing Harbor and extends hundreds of miles offshore. Then right here, you can see the difference between the Monterey Submarine Canyon and the Grand Canyon on land. And so it's pretty much the same thing, but the Monterey Submarine Canyon is underwater, and it's more than 2 miles deep. And there are some parts that are even 12,000 feet deep, so about 2 miles deep. Crazy. And so along with the submarine canyon, we get this thing called upwelling, which means that the winds kind of help us make more food for the animals. And so the spring winds will blow the surface water offshore, and then it gets replaced by the deep, cold, nutrient-rich water up to the surface. And it sparks a phytoplankton bloom. Just there, you can see all the little dots and even the jelly there. And then with more plankton, you get more zooplankton, which is bigger animals that eat the plankton, and that includes small schooling fish and krill and things like that. And that's what attracts the bigger animals, which is the whales and dolphins. And so let's go a little bit, talk about what's inside the whale's mouth. And so since we're kind of paying attention to the humpbacks and the gray whales, those are baleen whales. And so the things that are common between all baleen whales is that they have 2 blowholes on top of their heads here. So they don't have any teeth. Instead, they have these baleen plates that hang from their top jaw of the roof of their mouth, and they use it kind of like a filtration system. And then they do not echolocate. So echolocation is common between the toothed whales. That's how they find their food. All they do is kind of send out a signal. It bounces off the object, comes back to them, and gives them a mental picture on what they're putting their signal on, how big the fish is, for example, how big the fish is, how far it is, and things like that. And so this is a gray whale skull, and how you can see the baleen that's hanging from their top jaw. And so, it kind of looks like a push broom just hanging out from the top of their mouth, and they'll use that like a filtration system. So the way this works is that the baleen whales will dive in the water, they'll locate their bait ball of fish or krill, and they'll take a big gulp of them. They'll use their throat and tongue muscles to push out the water, and then use their tongue to lick up all the things that get stuck on the inside of its baleen. And humpback whales can eat around 2,000 to 3,000 pounds of food a day. That's kind of like the weight of a Mini Cooper car. And so you can see them. So these humpback whales are going to be lunge feeding. which means that they're going to trap the fish at the top of the surface of the water. So we'll watch it again, but pay attention to, you can still see fish scattering outside the whale's mouth, and the birds are diving in the water to get the extra fish that didn't end up in the whale's mouth. And so people are sometimes scared. They think when they're snorkeling or they're scuba diving, they might get swallowed by a whale. But I'll tell you a secret, that can't happen. So humpback whales' throats are only the size of like a large grapefruit. So they couldn't even swallow you if they wanted to. But we'll watch that cool video again. You can see its blowholes just opened when it was breathing, and then it closes back up when they're about to go below the surface. Pretty cool. And so this is the different things that baleen whales eat, mostly fish and krill. Sometimes whales and dolphins eat squid, or even copepods, which are kind of these squishy creatures. And then the gray whales will eat the amphipods, like Jacqueline said earlier. So then some distinct features of humpback whales. So humpback whales have very long pectoral fins or flippers on the side of their bodies. It could be 1/3 their body length, so about 15 feet long. And then they'll accumulate barnacles on them as well, and things like that. So these could be very dangerous for, to get in the way with, because they're very powerful, just like their tails. And so you might be wondering, how we tell the difference between which whale is who. And this is how we do it. So researchers will take pictures of the underside of the flukes of a humpback whale, or the tails of the humpback whales. And they'll put it in a database and keep track of who's who. This is how they can tell where the whale has been, where the whales migrate. And these flukes can be anywhere from all black to all white and everything in between. As they age, they accumulate more scarring on their tails, and their patterns might change a little, but it remains the same pretty much throughout their lifetime. And so this is how researchers document how old whales are, from following them as, when they were traveling with their mom until the last day of their life. And you can, even figure out who these whales like spending their time with. Sometimes they might like a certain whale's, feeding strategy, or kind of like a traveling buddy. And so it's really cool. I mean, this one on the right here, this one's nickname is Condor, because it looks like a condor with its wings spread out. It's really cool. So this is kind of a chart to show you all the different feeding areas and breeding areas for humpback whales. There are 14 to 16 different populations of humpbacks around the world. And the population that we have here in Monterey Bay can be found all along the west coast of the US, including Oregon, Washington, where their feeding grounds are. And during the winter months, they will migrate south to Baja California, Mexico. And some of them even go as far as Costa Rica in Central America. And we know this because of the photo ID work that researchers are doing. And there have been some encounters where some of these populations, there is a little bit of overlap. So we really don't know too much about them. And many people think that the humpback whales that we see here go to Hawaii, but that's actually a different population. Most of the humpback whales that you see in Hawaii are in their breeding grounds, and they'll go to Alaska when they go back to their feeding grounds. And so you'll get to hear a little bit of humpback whale song. So essentially, humpbacks are singing the same song, just different variations of it. Their songs can be heard hundreds of miles away if they're in very deep water and if there's no noise pollution. And humpback whales learn song from each other. So a population might share their song, or, we don't have any dividers in the ocean. So, a lot of the humpbacks can hear the different populations around, but it's continually evolving. The whales listen and learn from each other and give their own twist to the song. And so what's weird about the humpback whale song is that these whales don't have any vocal cords. So all they're doing is moving air across different compartments of the larynx to make sounds. And so here's a little bit of humpback whale song. So that was recorded in Monterey Bay. Oftentimes in the feeding grounds, we don't hear them singing because usually humpbacks sing to males will sing to attract the female to him. But the recent study said that when a male sang, it attracted more males to the area. And so they said, well, how is that? And they said, well, it's because the other male whales know that since one male is singing, maybe there's a female around, so I'm gonna go to that area too. And so it's kind of up to the humpback if it wants to sing or not, because although it might not impress the female, more males might be trying to compete for her in the same area. So it's pretty crazy how whales even have to think about, what they're gonna do for their future, I guess. All right, gray whales. And so gray whale, you can see those patchy white spots on the gray whales. Those are barnacles. Gray whales carry heavy loads of these freeloaders. The barnacles are just along for the ride. They don't really harm the whale or feed on the whales like true parasites do. And barnacles don't serve any obvious advantage to these whales, but they give the whale lice, the kind of orangish things that you see on the whale, a place to hang on to when the whale's, getting washed by the water when it surfaces and things like that. And so whale lice are another type of whale hitchhiker. So unlike barnacles, lice are true parasites. They feed on gray whale skin and damaged tissue. And the lice gather around open wounds and scars, trying to pretty much shield them or heal them. And whale lice can be spread from mother whales to their calves during birth, nursing, or other bodily contact. But luckily for the lice-infested whales, other creatures go after that lice. Top smelt, a silvery fish, that school in the breeding grounds or lagoons normally feed on, marine plants and tiny shrimps and things like that. But when the whales are around, these fish like to dine on the whales and eat all the lice and things like that. So it's really cool. So the whales have a smoother ride for their migration, and the fish get to eat protein-rich food at the same time. And so these gray whales are primarily bottom feeders. They consume a wide variety of amphipods, which you can see here, all different kinds. And on occasion, gray whales have been observed feeding on krill as well. But gray whales are a little different. Unlike other baleen whales, gray whales feed on bottom-dwelling organisms, and by suctioning sediment and filtering out like worms and crustaceans through their baleen. And so the gray whales suck sediment and food from the seafloor by rolling on their sides and swimming slowly along, filtering through about 130 to 180 baleen plates on each side of their upper jaw. And so in doing so, they often leave very long trails of mud behind them and even make like feeding pits in the seafloor. So you'll see all these kind of chunks out of the seafloor where gray whales have been feeding. And what's cool about gray whales is that they think most of them are right-handed, kind of like us humans. Researchers realized this because the gray whale's face on the right side was almost smooth, like the barnacles were worn down or they got scraped off. And so that's because when the gray whales go kind of dive down, they'll scoop up their food with the sediment and favor their right sides. And the gray whales are also different when we're photo identifying them. So we don't look for their tails, we actually look for their dorsal ridge. And so it's those series of knuckles on the back of the gray whale where the dorsal fin would be if it had one. And we also look at scars and barnacles and their mottled skin patterns. So this is a cool underwater video that we recorded in Monterey Bay during the gray whales' southern migration. It seemed like they were just swimming just very close to each other as they traveled. The noise that you're going to hear in the background are dolphins in the distance. Usually gray whales it's almost like a knocking noise that they make, but at the time, I guess they just weren't making any noise. So this is kind of a map of kind of the migration of the gray whales. So they're found mainly in the shallow coastal waters of the North Pacific Ocean. There are two geographic distributions of gray whales in the Northern Pacific, which is the Eastern North Pacific stock and the West Coast. So the Eastern North Pacific stock, so that's the ones that we see, found along the west coast of North America. And then there's also a Western North Pacific stock that's found along the coast of Eastern Asia. But most of the Eastern Northern Pacific stock of gray whales spend their time summer feeding in the Bering and Chukchi seas, but some feed along the Pacific coast during the summer. And in waters off of the Alaska, British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, you can see them feeding. And then in the fall, the Eastern North Pacific stock of gray whales migrate from their summer feeding grounds, heading south along the coast of North America to spend the winter in their calving areas off Baja California, Mexico. And the calves are born during migration or in the shallow lagoons of the bays in Mexico from early January to mid-February. And from mid-February to May, the gray whales can be seen migrating northward along the US West Coast. And although the western and eastern stocks of the gray whales are thought to be relatively isolated from each other, some recent satellite tagging data and photo identification have shown that some of these western populations actually do migrate across the northern Alaska and along the west coast of British Columbia in the US. So again, there's some overlap that we don't really know of yet. Maybe they're a lot more mixed than we think, but with more research, we can kind of narrow it down that. So this is a gray whale video taken from the cliffs of Big Sur. And these are the mom and calf pairs that are making their way back up the coast, trying to be very sneaky. Sometimes you'll see them go through the kelp forest like this, or really hug the shoreline because they know that predators are around. And the predators that are around are killer whales. And so they're kind of waiting and listening for the gray whales to come by. But this one, you'll see the mom and calf pairs travel up the coast. So I mentioned sometimes killer whales, do get a run-in with killer whales. Killer whales are the gray whale's only predator. Sometimes the calves are unlucky though. The gray whale moms do whatever they can to defend their calf, but sometimes these new moms do lose their babies. And these killer whales like to dine on the gray whale calves. Most of the time, it seems that they like to feed on the lower jaw and the tongue of the gray whale because that's the softest part. But we have seen killer whales eat the whole gray whale, and so they don't really waste anything. But normally the leftover gray whale, sometimes they'll sink to the bottom of the sea floor and be food for all those animals down there too. But sometimes there are survivors. As you can see, this gray whale calf had quite the battle. There are killer whale tooth rake marks all over its flukes or its tail, but thankfully it escaped and lived to see another day. And with that, I'd like to thank you so much for listening and tuning in to the Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History Science Saturday, and Marine Life Studies is so lucky to be a part of it.